Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. If you're probably a Leafs fan that's watching or listening to the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, it's probably not a good Monday for you, especially what happened yesterday. And as you see, if you're watching the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on YouTube, I am wearing my Toronto Maple Leafs jersey and my Toronto Maple Leafs hat. I am not a Maple Leafs fan. I am a Blackhawks fan, as you guys should know all too well. You've been listening to this podcast ever since I started the Hockey Talk TG podcast, which was last year in May of 2024. You would know that I'm a Blackhawks fan, but I'm just wearing this Maple Leafs jersey and hat because of two things. One, because Austin Matthews is my favorite player from Toronto Maple Leafs besides Mitch Marner. And two, just to, kind of troll at Maple Leafs fans. So that's why I'm wearing this if you're watching the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on YouTube. But as always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you are watching the podcast on YouTube, and make sure that you're following the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, and you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you want to make sure that you are staying up to date on the latest episodes of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. But without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get started. We'll start by recapping Game 7 of the Florida Panthers and Toronto Maple Leafs. And we all know what happened in Game 7. The Maple Leafs did not show up and did not show out in Game 7, and they got demolished 6-1 again. And they lose Game 7 again. And the Panthers win the series 4-3, and they will advance to the Eastern Conference Final for the third straight year. And they will take on the Carolina Hurricanes, which they did face each other in the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals before, which was a clean sweep, surprisingly, by the Florida Panthers in the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals. And Florida, they dominated most of this game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Their offense was clicking on all cylinders. And their offense was led by no other than Brad Marchand, who seems to own the Maple Leafs when it comes to Game 7s and overall throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs. Fun fact, Brad Marchand is actually 5-0 all time against the Leafs in Game 7. And he had a goal and 2 assists for a 3-point night in this game. So did E2 Luostarinen. He also had a goal and 2 assists for a 3-point night. Seth Jones contributed a goal and assist for a 2-point night ever since he was traded to the Panthers by the Blackhawks. So he went from the Blackhawks to the Panthers. Seems to be working out well for Seth Jones. He's really great on the power play for the Florida Panthers, and he has become a penalty kill shutdown guy. Somehow, at least from my perspective, I feel like he's become that penalty kill because I've seen him out on the penalty kill like a few times, and he's been really great for the Florida Panthers overall since coming in to that group. So that trade really worked out well for Panthers general manager Bill Zito, and as a Blackhawks fan, I really wanted Seth Jones to get off the team because I didn't think he would fit well into our needs to make our team better. And also when during his time in the Blackhawks, he was just terrible for us and not contributing well. But on the Florida Panthers, we're kind of seeing the old vintage, well, not vintage, but we're kind of seeing the old Primus type Seth Jones on the Florida Panthers. So that trade worked out well for both sides. Of course, we get Spencer Knight, and he's doing like his stats with us. Well, not the best, but they were solid, and it's a push in the right direction. And the Panthers, they get Seth Jones. He comes up big in Game 7. And overall, the trade worked out well for both sides, both the Blackhawks and Panthers. So I'm happy nonetheless to see that he's doing well for the Florida Panthers in Game 7. Obviously, it just didn't work out well in Chicago with us. So great that he's doing well in Game 7 and doing well for the Florida Panthers. Anton Lundell, Jonas Gagovich, and Sam Reinhart also scored for Florida. Alexander Barkov finished with 2 assists. And Sergei Bobrovsky made 20... Excuse me. Sergei Bobrovsky made 20 saves for the Florida Panthers. And the Florida Panthers, they had a dominant second period. They outshot the Maple Leafs 18-5 in the second period, scoring 3 unanswered goals in a span of 6 minutes and 24 seconds from Seth Jones, Anton Lundell, and Jonas Gagarin. And we all saw the clip of Mitch Marner. You didn't see it on Instagram. You didn't see it on Twitter, maybe TikTok even, that Mitch Marner was irate. And he was not happy when the Maple Leafs went down 3-0. And, of course, Mitch Marner was yelling at the Maple Leafs bench. He was saying, "Wake the F up." He was not happy, just irate. And, wasn't feeling it. Like, he wanted the Maple Leafs to step up. But, as always, as we've seen from the Toronto Maple Leafs the past few years, they have not stepped up. Max Domi got the lone goal for the Leafs early in the third period to cut the deficit to 3-1, but of course the Panthers offense quickly responded with goals from Eetu Luostarinen, Sam Reinhart, and of course Brad Marchand, which Brad Marchand's goal ended up being an empty netter, sealing the 6-1 victory. And Joseph Woll made 27 saves for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Game 7 loss. And fun fact, probably not a fun fact if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and if you guys are watching this on YouTube, you guys will probably see me bump my head a lot on this mic because I have on my hat. If I didn't have on my hat, I probably wouldn't do that as much. But yeah, fun fact. Not a fun fact if you're a Leafs fan. The Maple Leafs are 0-7 in this past Game 7s. And they have not won a Game 7 since 2004. And of course, as you look at the history, what's funny to me, before I get into the history of this, Leafs fans keep saying every year, "This is our year. This is our year. Something's going to change. Something's going to." I even heard Paul Bissonnette saying that. Like, we all know how Biz is feeling after the Leafs Game 7 loss again. I'm pretty sure he's feeling emotional. You're watching the Spinning Chicklets podcast, because as I'm doing this episode of Hockey Talk TG podcast, Spinning Chicklets podcast is live, and I can imagine he's not feeling too great after the Maple Leafs Game 7 loss. And I saw Biz trying to fire up the Maple Leafs. He said he's going to be confident that they will come out to win. He said the same thing for Game 4. Said the same thing for Game 5. Game 6, which they did win Game 6. They didn't win Game 6. And then he was confident that they'll win the Game 7. They still end up being the same old Leafs, choking it once again. So I kind of find it funny that Leafs fans chanting, "This is our year. This is our year. Something's going to change. This is the year that we get it done. This is the year that we go to the Stanley Cup Final. I know it. I believe it. Something will change. Something will change. We are not going to be the same old Leafs. But look at the results. You say the same crap every year, and you come out with the same thing, choking once again." So I kind of find it hilarious that Leafs fans will chant that. And nothing. And they don't stay true to their word. They don't stay true to their word. They don't. I can't find the right word to use for this. But they don't ever deliver. They don't ever stand tall on their words. They keep believing that the Leafs will get it done, but the Leafs end up not getting it done. And you should take a look at the pictures from the past few years that the Leafs were eliminating Game 7s. It's just been frustrated and crying. It's like, "Oh, we can't get it done. Oh man, we choke once again." Like, you guys do this every year, and you don't ever deliver. Like all you do is just say, "I promise they'll get it done. Promise this, promise that," but it never happens. So I kind of find it both funny, and I actually kind of feel a little bit sad for Maple Leafs fans. It's like I feel a little bit sad and kind of funny. I actually, it kind of feels funny, but it's also sad at the same time that the Maple Leafs have not ever went to the Stanley Cup Final. And we all know they haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967. 1967 was the last time that the Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup. And as you take a look at the history at the Maple Leafs in Game 7, like I said, 0-7 all time when it comes to the Maple Leafs in Game 7. 2013, Game 7 loss to the Boston Bruins. I remember that game all too well. Leafs were up 4-1 over the Boston Bruins. Bruins come back and they get goals from Milan Lucic. And they get a goal from Nathan Horton. And then they get the game-tying goal from Patrice Bergeron. And Patrice Bergeron ends up winning the game in overtime. I remember that game all too well. And that was probably one of the best Stanley Cup playoff games of all time, if I'm being honest. So yeah, 2013 Game 7 loss to the Bruins in the first round. And then 2018 Game 7 loss to the Boston Bruins in the first round. 2019 Game 7 loss to the Boston Bruins in the first round. 2021, Game 7 loss to the Montreal Canadiens. Leafs had a 3-1 series lead over the Montreal Canadiens. And they choked it. They lost Game 7. They choked it and they lose in Game 7. They had a 3-1 series lead, a chance to close it out in Game 5. They didn't do it. They lost in overtime in Game 5. They had a chance to close it out in Game 6. Yes, Barry Kotkaniemi with the overtime game-winning goal. Couldn't get it done in Game 6. And then you go to Game 7, and we know how those Leafs are in Game 7s. They lose it. They actually got shut out in Game 7, I believe, in that year against the Montreal Canadiens. And then you go to 2022, another Game 7 loss to the Lightning. And I believe the Leafs were up in that series, and they still lost to Tampa. And then last year against Boston, David Pastrnak with the overtime game-winning goal, eliminating the eliminating the Toronto Maple Leafs from the first round. They lose in Game 7. And now we come to 2025 against the defending Stanley Cup champions, and it's another Game 7 loss. I almost didn't even want to watch this game, if I'm being honest, because I already knew what was going to happen. Because we all know how the Leafs do in Game 7s. And they lose Game 7s. So I almost didn't even want to watch this Game 7, if I'm being honest. Because I already know what the result was going to be before I even, started to watch. I did watch the game, obviously. But I didn't really want to. I did watch it, but then I kind of felt like I already know what's going to happen. So should I continue to watch it or should I not watch it? I don't know. Yeah, they have not won a Game 7 since 2004, and they are now 12-16 all-time when it comes to Game 7s. So when it comes to these Game 7s, the Maple Leafs don't ever do well. And I think one of the fans had threw an Austin Matthews jersey out on the ice once again. And the Maple Leafs defense was just weak in this game. They allowed 75 shot attempts in the first two periods. Overall, the Leafs have been outshot in this game, and if you take a look at the shot attempts, they've been outshot when it comes to shot attempts. Like, at the start of the game, it was like shot attempts were 22-0 in favor of the Florida Panthers. Maple Leafs weren't generating any offense whatsoever. They did not try. And it kind of seems like after the shutout win in Game 6, Joseph Wall's shutout win, Leafs win 2-0, forced to Game 7. It comes to this, and the Leafs, they blow it once again, losing 6-1. And they lost 6-1 in Game 5. So they don't ever deliver like Leafs fans know that they would. And Leafs fans are, always wrong about this. They do the same thing every year. Every year. It's a new year, and it's still the same old Maple Leafs. Nothing changes. And fingers crossed that Mitch Marner comes to Chicago in the offseason and plays with the Chicago Blackhawks. I would literally love to see him play with Connor Bedard. I think he'll fit well with the group. Obviously, he's not working with his hometown Toronto Maple Leafs, so maybe he can come to the Shot City and he can play for my Chicago Blackhawks. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not a Maple Leafs fan. I'm wearing this because Austin Matthews is my favorite player, and also just to besides Mitch Marner, which hopefully, fingers crossed, he becomes a Blackhawk in the offseason. But I'm wearing this because Austin Matthews is my favorite player besides Mitch Marner, and also just to maybe sort of kind of troll at Maple Leafs fans at this, but yeah. It should, just tuning in and if you're watching this on YouTube. Alright, but moving on to Game 6 of the Dallas Stars and Winnipeg Jets. So, Thomas Harley, he scores the overtime game-winning goal as the Dallas Stars win 2-1 in overtime against the Winnipeg Jets in Game 6 on Saturday. Scored a minute and 33 seconds into overtime on the power play from the high slot off a feed of Tyler Seguin. Beats Connor Hellebuck stick side to win the game. And the Dallas Stars, they win the series 4-2. They advance to the Western Conference Final for the third straight year, and they will face the Edmonton Oilers for the second straight year. And of course, we all know what happened last year when the Oilers eliminated the Stars in 6 games last year to reach the Stanley Cup Final. But Game 1 of this series will start Wednesday in Dallas, just like Game 1 was in Dallas in the 2024 Western Conference Finals. Game 1 will be in Dallas in the 2025 Western Conference Finals. And fun fact, the Stars improved to 6-1 at home during the 2025 Stanley Cup playoffs. So they have a really good home record through the Stanley Cup playoffs despite not having home ice advantage entering the series. They have won all 3 games to clinch the series. And Sam Steele, besides Thomas Harley, he also played a big role in this win. He also scored. He scored for Dallas, and he also drew the tripping penalty on Mark Scheifele on a breakaway with 14.8 seconds left in regulation. Speaking of Mark Scheifele, condolences to his family. Obviously, this was a emotional game for the Winnipeg Jets. It was an emotional game for the Winnipeg Jets with the unexpected passing of Mark Scheifele's father, Brad Scheifele. He unexpectedly passed away, and I just want to give my condolences to the Scheifele family, Mark Scheifele's friends, and everyone in his family that is affected by this tragedy. Obviously, like I said, emotional game for the Winnipeg Jets and particularly Mark Scheifele. He did score in this game, though. That goal was for his dad. That he did score in this game. He had the long goal for the Winnipeg Jets in this game. So got a goal for his pops. And also, fans have donated over $30,000 to the Jets True North Youth Foundation, and they gave $55 each. At least they gave $55 in donation to honor Mark's jersey number. And take a look at the post-game handshake. It was also emotional. Even the Dallas Stars gave respect to Mark Scheifele. Like I said, it was nice to see him score in this game. The penalty, obviously he didn't want to take the penalty right there. And obviously, what happened next. But at least he scored in this game. And yeah, I think that was a nice tribute to his dad with the goal right there for Mark Scheifele. So yeah, just giving out my condolences to the Scheifele family on this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast for the unexpected passing of his father, Brad Scheifele. Connor Hellebuck, he made 18 saves in this loss for the Winnipeg Jets. And even more bad news for the Jets. One of their best defensemen in Josh Morrissey left this game because of an injury, and he did not return. So it was kind of already a lot of troubles for the Winnipeg Jets. And the President's Trophy curse still continues for the Jets after they were eliminated. My Chicago Blackhawks still remain as the last team to win the President's Trophy and to win the Stanley Cup. Of course, that happened in 2013 when the Blackhawks got it done. So, yeah. But Jets, I thought something told me, or a little voice inside my head thought that the Jets were probably going to come back from being 3-1 down 3-1 the series, forcing a game 7, and then moving on to the Western Conference Final. In fact, I would have loved to see an all-Canadian Western Conference Final between the Winnipeg Jets and the Edmonton Oilers, but fortunately that it's not happened. But Jets had a heck of a season, coming out on top with the President's Trophy. Kyle Hellebuck, no doubt in mind that he's going to win his what would it be? Third Vezina Trophy, third Vezina Trophy. Correct me if I'm wrong. So he's going to win the Vezina Trophy once again. He had a stellar season for the Winnipeg Jets. So can't wait to see that happen. And best of luck to the Winnipeg Jets in the off season, what they do, and know they'll come out strong heading into next season. All right, now we're going to preview the Eastern Conference Final between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Florida Panthers. Since Game 1 will start, that Eastern Conference Final Series will start on Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time at the Lenovo Center in Raleigh, North Carolina. That game will air on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max for you guys to watch. And like I said earlier in this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, this is a rematch of the 2023 Eastern Conference Final between the two teams. And surprisingly, the Panthers swept the Hurricanes in the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals to win that series and move on to the Stanley Cup Final. Of course, we all know the Matthew Tkachuk heartbreaker celly that he did after he scored that game-winning goal with 1 second left in the third period. And Matthew Tkachuk actually came up clutch in that series overall in the 2023 Eastern Conference Final. He had 3 game-winning goals in that series. He had the game-winning goal in Game 1 in that series, Game 2, obviously being Game 4 of that series where he did a little heartbreaker celly after he scored that goal in Game 4. But could he come up clutch in this series? Again, it's a high possibility he can, and I know he will. But we'll just have to see how everything will go in that series. In the regular season, the Panthers went 2-1-0 against the Hurricanes in the regular season, and the Panthers outshot the Hurricanes 13-6 in the not outshot, outscored the Hurricanes 13-6 in the regular season. Sergei Bobrovsky, I think he started both of these games, so I should say 3 of these games. It could be 3. He had a 1-1-0 record against Carolina this season, and for the Hurricane side, Spencer Martin, the Hurricanes AHL goalie, he actually played 2 of those games, and Pierre Kochetkov had the lone win for Carolina, making 25 saves in a 3-1 victory back on January the 2nd. But let's take a look how these two teams advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, the Hurricanes won in 5 games against the struggling and injured New Jersey Devils, and they won in 5 games against the Washington Capitals to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. And for the Florida Panthers side, they won in 5 games against their division and arch rivals in the Tampa Bay Lightning, and most recently being in 7 games against the Toronto Maple Leafs to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. And if you take a look at the Hurricanes playoff leaders, Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis each have 10 points in the playoffs, while Andrei Svechnikov leads the team with 8 goals. And for the Panthers side, Brad Marchand and Eetu Luostarinen, we all know they had a big Game 7 against Toronto in the second round. They both lead the Panthers with 12 points in 12 playoff games, 3 goals, 9 assists each for 12 points in 12 playoff games. And Sam Reinhart is second on the team with 11 points, 4 goals, 7 assists for 11 points in 12 games. And Sam Bennett leads the team in goals with 6. He has 6 goals in this Stanley Cup playoffs. Goaltending matchup, It's obviously going to be Freddie Andersen versus Sergei Bobrovsky. Freddie Andersen has a 7-2 record with a 1.36 goals against average and a .937 save percentage with one shutout in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Pierre Kochetkov played one of these games in the Stanley Cup playoffs with a 1-0 record with a 2.50 goals against average and a .900 save percentage. For Sergei Bobrovsky, he is 8-4 with a 2.31 goals against average and a .901 save percentage with two shutouts in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And in their series against Toronto, the Panthers had 20 players that have recorded at least 1 point. So the Panthers have a lot of depth on this team. And so do the Carolina Hurricanes, but the Panthers probably had the better depth than the Hurricanes do. But obviously, key players to watch in this series: Sebastian Aho, Seth Jarvis, Andrei Svechnikov, and Freddie Andersen, maybe Logan Stankoven. And for the Florida Panthers side, Eetu Luostarinen, Brad Marchand, Alexander Barkov, Sergei Bobrovsky, and Sam Reinhart will be players to watch in this series for the Florida Panthers. And I can see this series being a tightly contested battle between these two well-matched teams, each seeking a return to the Stanley Cup Final. Of course, the Hurricanes haven't made the Stanley Cup Final since 2006, and that was when head coach Peter Laviolette led them to the Stanley Cup. Cam Ward was on the team then. Justin Williams was on the team then. Rob Brindamore was the team's captain at the time. And, of course, the Panthers make the Stanley Cup Final, obviously, last year, winning the Stanley Cup in 7 games against the Edmonton Oilers. And my prediction for this series, I'm taking the Panthers in 7 games. I know some people predicted Carolina. In fact, I felt like, I'm not saying that it did, but I kind of felt like a lot of people are predicting Carolina will win this series against the Florida Panthers. But I'm thinking the Panthers will get it done, but it just kind of feels like it to me, maybe from my perspective, but that a lot of people are thinking that Carolina will come out top in this series and saying that they're a different team this season, which they are. They probably are a different team this season than they were the last time these two teams matched up, and the years before. I can see that. But I'm just still going with the Florida Panthers winning in 7 games. But let me know you guys' thoughts on that. Do you think the Florida Panthers will win in 7 games, or do you think that they'll win this series overall in general, or do you think the Carolina Hurricanes will eliminate the defending Stanley Cup champions and will go on to the Stanley Cup Final? Let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments down below on YouTube and on Spotify. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio, apologies, but I don't think you can comment down on those. So if I were you, after you listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio, I'd probably go over to YouTube or Spotify if you have it and just comment down my answer on there. Now we're going to preview the Western Conference Finals between the Dallas Stars and Edmonton Oilers. So game 1 of that series will be in Dallas Wednesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That game will air on ESPN and ESPN Plus for you guys to watch. The second straight year that the Dallas Stars and Edmonton Oilers will face each other in the Western Conference Finals. The Oilers won in 6 games last year to reach the Stanley Cup Final. And fun fact, both the Oilers and Stars won in overtime against the Golden Knights and Jets to reach the Western Conference Finals. So both of those teams getting done in the series clinching game in overtime. Kasperi Kapanen for the Edmonton Oilers, and for the Dallas Stars, Tomas Harley both scoring the overtime game-winning goal to send the teams off to the Western Conference Finals. Taking a look at the regular season, the Stars went 2-1-0 against Edmonton in the regular season. Jason Robinson and Rope Hintz each tallied 6 points in those games, with Jason Robinson recording a hat-trick in a 4-3 win back on March 26. And taking a look at the Dallas Stars playoff journey to get to the Western Conference Finals, they won in 7 games against the Colorado Avalanche. Mikko Rantanen and 4-point night in that Game 7 against his former team. And then they won in 6 games recently against the Winnipeg Jets to reach the Western Conference Finals. Of course, obviously, Thomas Harley scoring that overtime game-winning goal for the Dallas Stars. And for the Edmonton Oilers side, the Oilers won in 6 games against the LA Kings, eliminating them for the 4th straight year in the first round, and then they won in 5 games against the VGK, Vegas Golden Knights, to reach the Western Conference Final. Of course, Kasperi Kapanen with the overtime game with the goal in Game 5 to send the Oilers off to the Western Conference Finals. I did see this on the NHL website and obviously on social media. Defenseman Mattias Ekholm and goaltender Calvin Picker are both day-to-day, but they could return at some point during the series. It won't be Game 1, but I think as the series goes on, we can see them return at some point. Of course, Mattias Ekholm has not played since April 11th due to an undisclosed injury, while Calvin Picker has missed the last 3 games with a lower body injury. And taking a look, the goaltending battle is going to be Stuart Skinner versus Jake Oettinger, with Calvin Picker being out and with Stuart Skinner reclaiming his number 1 role with those back-to-back shutout victories to close out the second round. He is 2-1. He is 2-1 with a 1.28 goals against average and a .944 save percentage in his last 3 games of the Stanley Cup playoffs. His first 3 games, which was against LA, first 2 games have not been pretty, or nothing has not been the way he planned to. But he started off with a 0-2 record with a 6.11 goals against average and a .810 save percentage, allowing 11 goals on 58 shots. So, of course, those first 2 games for him have not been good. So Calvin Picker had to step in. Of course, Calvin Picker has a 6-0 record with a 2.84 goals against average and a .888 save percentage. But Stuart Skinner is going back to the old Stuart Skinner that we've seen last year in the Stanley Cup playoffs for the Edmonton Oilers. So that is good news for Oilers fans right there. But obviously, he's still hoping to have Calvin Picker back in the lineup. But it's nice to see that Stuart Skinner reclaimed his number 1 role as the starting goalie. And taking a look at Jake Oettinger's side, Jake Oettinger is 8-5 with a 2.47 goals against average and a .919 save percentage. Casey DeSmith did play 1 game for the Dallas Stars, coming in relief for Jake Oettinger in Game 4 in the first round series against the Colorado Avalanche, allowing 1 goal on 14 shots faced. And taking a look at the Stars' offensive leaders, of course, the Moose, Mikko Rantanen. He leads the Stars with 19 points in the playoffs, 9 goals, 10 assists for 19 points. In the Stanley Cup playoffs so far. Thomas Harley has contributed with 11 points, 4 goals, 7 assists for 11 points in Stanley Cup playoffs. And Roope Hintz has 10 points in the Stanley Cup playoffs with 5 goals, 5 assists for 10 points for Roope Hintz in Stanley Cup playoffs. And the Oilers' offensive leaders, Connor McDavid leads the Oilers with 17 points in the playoffs, 3 goals, 14 assists with 17 playoff points, followed by Leon Draisaitl with 16 points, 5 goals, 11 assists in Stanley Cup playoffs, and Evan Bouchard with 12 points, 4 goals, 8 assists for 12 points in Stanley Cup playoffs. My prediction for this, I'm going to say the Oilers in 6, if not 7. If Oilers in 6, I think they'll get it done in 6 once again, if not 7, against the Dallas Stars. But let me know you guys' thoughts on that. Do you agree with my prediction? I feel like the Oilers will get it done in 6, and plus I picked them to win the Stanley Cup and start the season, so I'm still going to somehow stay onto my pick for the Edmonton Oilers. I think they'll get it done in 6 once again, if not 7. And that's going to do it for this episode of Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it. There are no Stanley Cup playoff games on the slate for today. So it's kind of just a rest day for the NHL and for the players and teams are in the conference finals. But as always, make sure to follow Hockey Talk TG Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you want to make sure that you get this podcast to follow. Both of you guys have a great rest of your day. Hopefully the Leafs fans can recover from that Game 7 loss to the Florida Panthers. Keep God first as always. Be blessed. I'll see you guys Wednesday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. Take care.